Hi, I'm Avery and I'm here to talk about a signature shot. I don't really know what to call it, so let's call it the Bluffside thrust because it is an offside shot that is a feint and turns into a thrust. This shot has served me really well over the years. It works particularly well against someone fighting with a sword and a shield, and it is, if you're holding a one-handed weapon, that you can stab with. What it looks like, as a quick preview, pretty straightforward. There are a bunch of different ways that I throw it. It looks just like this. The camera's set a little low, so maybe if I dip down, it just looks like this. It's not a heck of a lot of feint, but it's enough. So the objective here, I'm not trying to go like, ha, and get someone to block and then turning it into a thrust. I actually didn't consider it a feint for a really long time because my objective was not necessarily to fake out my opponent. It's just a way to throw a thrust that people have trouble tracking. So here I've set up an opponent. You have to use your imagination a little bit, but let's say this is a tall person with a shield, and then they've got a defense. And this defense includes maybe their hand. They're sort of like this, or maybe they've got their blade forward like this, but they've got a defense on this side of their body. And this defense here is going to block any shot coming in along this angle. So see this piece of leather here? This is blocked, right? And that may or may not be their guard. That might just be where they move. Like if someone throws a shot at me over here, I might go, huh, to block like that, right? So I've got this blocking. And this initial shot is going to hit right there, right? So I throw this offside, it's going to be blocked by that defense, whatever's there, right? So the objective of this thrust is to miss the defense, right? So they feel safe. You miss the defense, so instead of going bonk into whatever that defense is, you're going to miss it and then thrust. All is one smooth motion. And the way that you do that is by shortening your range. So again, it looks like this. They go to block, and then you shorten your range and thrust. You can shorten your range a few different ways. One of them is to just slow your momentum. Another is to stop your hand in space. Your hand is coming forward, just stop, and then let the hand come forward again. So that looks like you throw the shot, the hand's coming forward, they read it, the hand pauses, and then the hand comes forward again. So just like that, right? But they see this as a chop or a cut to the offside, and then you can pull back on the elbow a little bit to get some of that little hitch. I'll get rid of this shield so you can see it a little better, and I'll use something maybe you can see this because it's light colored. So instead of just going bang for an offside, see the hand comes forward, steady pace, right? Lots of different offsides, so the hand comes forward first and then the blade comes out. The hand stays back a little bit and then goes forward. And again, you can do that by keeping the hand back and then letting it follow, or by thinking of keeping the elbow back and then following. But again, it doesn't look like it's not a two-phase motion. It's actually really smooth. It's just like that. Fortunately, this keeps moving out of the way. But imagine that's a sturdy defense of some sort. And you don't need a lot of room to get that face thrust in. So maybe you can see this, right? Just like that. So in a sense, the tip is actually traveling in a straight line to your opponent. It's not necessarily coming around in an arc, pulling, and then stabbing. It's not a two-step thing. It's actually a thrust the whole time. The tip, although the blade is rotating, the tip almost goes straight at the opponent. That's why I don't really consider it a feint, but it works really well. So from the side, again, it looks like this. From the other side, it's just this, right? So that tip is almost traveling straight. Sometimes I let it sneak out a little bit and then cut in. So if you looked at it from the top, it sort of goes diagonal towards the opponent and comes in a little bit. Sometimes it's a straight line. But again, the thing is, the tip is not whipping around the side, pulling back and thrusting. The tip is traveling pretty straight. The rest of your sword is sort of moving around to accommodate that because you're keeping the hand and elbow back. From the back, just looks like that. You can do it either leg forward. I like doing it sword leg forward, feels a little more comfortable. But your range is almost the same either way, right? Doesn't change a lot. because it's all about where your shoulder and body are rotated. And then, how do you defend against it? One, this sort of relies on people going like, oh, got that, now what am I going to do to counterattack, right? So it relies on your opponent feeling safe. It relies on your opponent not seeing it as a thrust. When people thrust, a lot of times it's like this sort of like linear motion. A lot of people don't see a sword arc that ends with a tip forward. It's almost, another way you might think of throwing it is instead of an offside that hits with the sweet spot of the sword, it's an offside that almost hits just with the tip of the sword. The sword is still traveling, the tip is still traveling a bit, not necessarily straight towards the opponent. So it's almost as though instead of hitting with the edge here, you just hit with the very tip. So how do you defend against it? One, be aware that a thrust can come anytime, and something that looks like a rotational blow can still hit with the tip and still hit hard. Another thing you can do is if you change the range a little bit, either it misses entirely or it hits the defense, or oftentimes if I miss, I end up going right past my opponent and you're a little bit overexposed, right? The tricky thing with this one as you practice it is getting the timing right. So you can hit with it, this is not, here. You can still thrust with the blade like this because the tip is still gonna make forward motion. It'll stick with a steel sword as well. But sometimes you might, as you get used to this blow, throw the tip too far and then extend. Or you might not throw it far enough and then extend, right? So a lot of it is just getting the timing right on when you go forward. The last advanced thing, I don't know why I do this. I denied doing it for a long time. But about 5, maybe 10 years ago, I jumped a lot when I threw this shot. I don't know why, but it seems to work a lot better and my accuracy goes up as well, right? So I start here, and then the person's dead, and my feet have switched, and I don't even notice it. The way I tended to throw that, maybe someone could explain to me, was I would jump and switch feet. And that time I missed, because I wasn't really paying attention. But in a fight, I'm very focused on my opponent, and I want to land this, and I don't tend to just do this. I'll go, bam. I don't know why I switch feet when I do it, but I often do. So that might help you, it might not, but when I'm all keyed up at my opponent and I really want to get that in, bam. And I think part of it is it just allows me a little bit better alignment, but you could also start left leg forward, and you could start right leg forward, you could start left leg forward, you could switch either way, right? You could also, so anyway, that worked really well for me. Hope it works for you.